Greetings. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. I'm Lexi Eve, and welcome back to another Walk Magick video. Today, I'm going to be going over and exploring Liber 44, the Mass of the Phoenix. Let's begin. So, this is one of 3 rituals published in Aleister Crowley's Liber 333, the Book of Lies. The other 2 being the Star Ruby and Star Sapphire rituals, which are basically updated forms of the pentagram and hexagram rituals, respectively. The purpose of this ritual is to partake of an epiclesis, a cake of light, soaked in blood drawn from the breast of the magician. The magician, like the phoenix, dies from the flame of their orison and is reborn to go and, quote, do their pleasure on the earth, end quote, i.e., to do their true will. In this video, I will go line by line, explaining how to perform the ritual as well as all the symbolism. It should first be noted that the phoenix corresponds with Tifereth, Sol, and Chakma, the seed of true will, according to the magician's tables. The phoenix is also symbolic of the spark of light that radiates from the wand of the magician, who uses their wand to draw images upon the astral plane. There, it is safe to assert that the fire of the phoenix derives from the light of Kether, the light of creation itself. The magician is like God, in that we have the power to create. Crowley writes in the commentary of this chapter about the phoenix, quote, the word phoenix may be taken as including the idea of pelican, the bird which is fabled to feed its young from the blood of its own breast. Yet the 2 ideas, though cognate, are not identical, and phoenix is the more accurate symbol, end quote. So you'll see that image that popped up, which is a pretty famous Rosicrucian painting, and it's of a pelican feeding its chicks from its bleeding breast, with the banner above it inscribed with INRI, signifying self-sacrifice, as there sort of is in this ritual, though updated to a thelemic concept. There is a connection with the death and rebirth that occurs in this ritual, as the phoenix also is said to do. The temple setup is simple. Quote, the magician, his breast bare, stands before an altar, on which are his borin, bell, thurible, and 2 of the cakes of light, end quote. We have already discussed the Eucharist, bell, and thurible in previous magic and theory and practice videos. Note that in the cake of light is the divine light, and when consumed, one casts their intention forth to manifest. The borin is a wood-cutting knife. This is a symbolic tool derived from Freemasonry, signifying the ability to create and perfect oneself by chipping off excess pieces and revealing the statue within the marble. You start off in Freemasonry as a rough block, and it's actually chipped down to a very smooth, even cube. So the borin is connected with that. Your flesh in this ritual becomes the artistic medium and mural upon which you're going to use this borin to create. The bell rings and vibrates throughout the entire universe. The amount of strokes on the bell affects the temple ether based on the symbolic attributes of the number of rings. For example, 1 ring starts or ends a ritual. It cleanses a space by divine authority connected with Kether, which is 1. 5 rings, for example, correspond with the 5 elements. More than 1 ring can be spaced out into a series of batteries. So in this ritual, the magician is instructed 4 separate times to ring the bell in a battery of 3, 5, 3, totaling 44 strokes altogether, 11 strokes each time. 353 is the pentagram surrounded or in union with the hexagram. The magician and their HGA, or the microcosm and macrocosm, in union. 44 corresponds with the number of Horus. In Hebrew, cut and blood both equate to 44. And 44 is also 11 times 4, being the number of magic 11 times the 4 elements. 4 is also associated with the earth for the culmination of the 4 elements, and that sigma 1 through 4 equals 10, the perfect number, and the number of Malkuth. 4 also signifies the equilateral cross, having 4 arms. This cross signifies both the earth for having 4 arms, connect with the elements, and Tifereth as the cross of suffering. Thus, 44 can be summarized as doing magic upon the base matter of earth. The thurible signifies fire and breath. The ruach, because the magician blows upon the charcoal. The thurible is also the flame of prayer and higher spiritual aspirations of the mind of the magician. So to begin this ritual, you set up your altar and perform your pentagram and hexagram rituals. Then, quote, In the sign of the Emperor, he reaches west across the altar and cries, "Hail Ra that goest in thy bark into the caverns of the dark." End quote. So I have a video on this channel about the sign of the Emperor. It is active, Ra Horkuid, and sends energy or your words out into the universe. And you have to know how to connect with and speak through this sign by thrusting your upper body forward, pointing your arms forward, equilateral with the floor, and really sending your words out to the universe itself. That divinity, that divine spark that exists within everything needs to be able to hear you. You have to know how to connect with and speak directly to it. The bark of Ra is the sun, so this is definitely a solar worshipping ritual. Sol is associated with the will of the magician. The caverns of the dark spoken of is the night sky, Nui. This ritual is performed at sunset facing west, so the sun goes into the west and night begins. You are facing the setting sun as you do this, and the sun setting in the west symbolizes death. You'll often hear, when somebody in the occult community passes away, they'll say his ship has sailed west. You might even hear that outside occult communities become quite famous. Basically, you're linking yourself with the dying sun, which will be reborn in the morning. As according to Egyptian mythology, every day the bark of Ra, the ship, the sun, was consumed by Nuit, and she rebirthed it every single morning in the east. She swallows in the west, it goes through her body, and then in the east it's reborn. Quote, "He gives the sign of silence and takes the bell and fire in his hands," end quote. Then say, quote, "East of the altar see me stand with light and music in mine hand," end quote. So the sign of silence is complementary to the sign of the Emperor. It's also in the same video on this channel as said before. You basically use your right index finger to touch your lower lip and visualize your body of light, crystallize and creating a field of spiritual protection around you. For fire, you should have a lit candle upon the altar. Some opt for a lighter or matches, but I think a candle looks more aesthetically pleasing. So you have that line, "East of the altar, see me stand with light and music in mine hand." You're basically picking up whatever you're using, a candle or lighter, flame, matches. Prefer the candle again because it could be lit prior and it looks better. So you lift that and you lift your bell and you say those words. You say, "See me stand," in that verse. Now who's seeing you stand? The gods, the universe, Ra, the HGA, yourself, all of these, the entire universe, the union beyond division, the source. You're speaking to that which is beyond the limitations of being and existence. Quote, "He strikes 11 times upon the bell in a battery of 353 and places the fire in the thurible. I strike the bell, I light the flame, I utter the mysterious name, Abrahadabra." He strikes 11 times upon the bell. End quote. So these lines are self-explanatory, and there's little to comment. I will mention about Abrahadabra. This should be intoned, and I've spoken about this word several times in depth on this channel. In short, there are 5 A's and 6 other letters, symbolizing again 11, the union of the magician, 5, and the HGA, 6, the micro and the macro, etc. Also, Abrahadabra has 11 letters. It's the word of magic derived from abracadabra, which is from Hebrew, a magical term meaning I create as I speak. In the dead center of Abrahadabra is Had, H-A-D, Hadit, the flame that burns in every heart of man and in the core of every star. This is the kernel, or Ein Sof, in the heart of the magician, this very center of your being, the very center of infinite space. And Abrahadabra equates to 418 by Gematria, the value of the letter Chet spelled in full. Chet has a value of 8 normally by Gematria. 8 is the number of Mercury. Mercury is the Magus, the logos of God. This word is the word of the Aeon. It governs beyond the word of the Magus 666, the Lima. The word of all Magus of this Aeon must therefore conform to the word Abrahadabra. So if another Magus arises and speaks a word, a logos, like the Lima, that word needs to be in conformity with the formula of Abrahadabra for as long as the Aeon of the crowned and conquering child lasts. As long as it's the Aeon of Horus, the next Magus has to speak a word that's in conformity with this, just as the Lima is in conformity with Abrahadabra. Next is a culmination in the form of a prayer, quote, "Now I begin to pray, thou child, holy thy name and undefiled. Thy reign is come, thy will is done. Here is the bread, here is the blood. Bring me through midnight to the sun. Save me from evil and from good, that thy one crown of all the 10, even now and here, be mine. Amen." End quote. Prayer is magic. You're essentially speaking to the highest source, perhaps even Horus Hera if you'd like, petitioning for something to happen. So when you reinforce these words with your will, you also set your mind, both conscious and unconscious, to fulfill the tasks necessary for your prayer to manifest. The light beyond physicality is affected and aids in this manifestation. So in this prayer, what's actually being said? Well, the child spoken of is the crowned and conquering Lord of the Aeon, Horus. His will is outlined in Liber, basically to free mankind from the throes of the slave god of Christianity and everything prior religiously that is now outdated. To gladden the black earth and sprout new life in green under the light, law, love, and liberty. The bread spoken of is the cake of light. The blood is of the magician. So for me, when I recite this, I gesture towards where my chest is, where I'll draw the blood from, and I'll gesture towards the 2 cakes of light. Quote, "Bring me through midnight to the sun," end quote, indicates both safe passage through the night, but also to be liberated from the illusions of death. So in the Lima, if you're not aware, death is really only another change and an inevitable one. We try not to, and we do not fear nor mourn death in the same way that people used to under Christianity. Oh, this person's going to hell, this person's going to heaven. No, it's a holy change. It's their greater feast. It's something to be, that we rejoice and face head on. So really only the body changes through death. The spirit cannot die. It goes on. It reincarnates, or it goes into the dissolution of the source. And even the body does not truly die in the sense we think, as in go away forever and disappear. Its matter is decomposed and goes through many a change. The particles that make up the body rearrange and reform into new beings. They go back into the rocks, into the dirt, into the minerals, into the air, into the water, and that body is still very alive in that sense. So the next line, "Save me from evil and from good," indicates another illusion, that of duality, the division of man and God. Good and evil are merely labels describing whether I find something pleasurable or it's something that craps on my joy. Nothing is inherently good or evil in and of itself. These are conditions of the mind. But beyond the mind, above the abyss, there is no difference between any one thing and any other thing. There is no good or evil, no love or hate. Everything just is. It's like that saying, a knife. A knife could be good. You could use it to cut your food. Or a knife could be bad. It could be used as a weapon. And even used as a weapon, it could be used to kill your food or in self-defense. Or a knife could be used as an aggressor with no just cause. So the knife is not good or evil. That depends on what a person does with it. And this line couples with the closing stanzas as a prayer to attain union with Kether, yoga, union with the divine, a state of being that transcends being, and also transcends anything that could be labeled with the words of the mind. You are praying to become a whole being as outlined in the Tree of Life. The next paragraph instructs to burn one of the 2 cakes of light. This is symbolic of the burnt offering of the Greeks and biblical times, and there's no need to sacrifice an animal in today's day and age. There's blood in the cake already, and that prana in the blood, that spiritual essence, is being offered up to Horus for him to manifest through. Blood gives power to the gods. It helps them influence matters on the earth through a physical connection to it, through the cake offered. It also affects the air, your breath, and therefore your consciousness. Then, after these verses, you recite the poem from Liber L. The light is mine, its rays consume me. I have made a secret door into the house of Ra and tomb. Of Kefra and of Ahathor, I am thy Dib, and Omen too, the prophet Ankaf Nakansu. By Beznamot, my breast I beat, etc., etc. This prayer invokes Nuit and Hadid. Thus, union results in the birth of Hera. And you actually are invoking the imagery from the Stele of Revealing with this adoration. So like when you do Liberation, you use the same adoration. You could do this here as well. When I say the adoration from the Book of the Law from the Stele of Revealing, What I like to do is visualize myself as Ankaf Nakan Su, and sometimes I'll physically stand in the same stance as him with one of my legs forward, either right or usually I think the right leg forward, my right arm forward but bent at a 60-degree angle with my palm upwards, and standing straight up with my other left arm down at my side, and then I see Horus or Rahor Kui on a throne in front of me with an altar between us, and Nuit arched over everything, and Hadit floating above us, just like in the stele. So I'll actually visualize that on the astral plane around me. Then you strike 11 times upon the bell again, and with the borin, the magician, quote, makes upon his breast the proper sign, end quote. So it was actually because of this verse when I was new to the Lima that I ended up meeting my teacher. I already was going through Liber O and Liber E thoroughly on my own, and I really wanted to take up this ritual next. So I began asking around online and at my local lodge. I had actually gotten the answers that I was looking for about what the proper sign is from a close friend in person. But some older gentleman saw my question online and reached out to me through one of the messenger apps, asking how he could help me. His exact words were, "How can this mage help you?" And that was William Wheeler. So I asked about the proper sign, and he gave me the same answer as my friend. So, the sign I used to carve into my breast to draw blood with the borin in this ritual is an equilateral cross. And some other Thelemites recommend using the NOX, which is a circle with an X in it symbol, and I totally agree that that is a valid choice. Especially in the ritual, NOX means the night of Pan, so it symbolizes the nighttime darkness. It's the grades above Tifereth, also those grade signs of NOX, the night of Pan. So that's totally valid, especially this ritual. It's evening, and you're going to go through the night, through the dark, the caverns of the dark. So there is that component with the night of Pan, with Nox. But I still opt for making a cross, an equilateral cross, because of the symbolism I talked about earlier, when I said the cross is both Malkuth and Tifereth, much like the Ace of Discs is the union of earth and soul, or spirit. Now, when you make this cut into your breast, you should have first, before this ritual, cleaned the area with an alcohol prep wipe. Then, you are just making a very gentle scratch several times for each of the 2 lines that make up the cross. If you keep gently running the knife over the skin, eventually, the point where the 2 lines intersect will glisten with the dewdrop of blood. That's all you need to draw, nothing more. That's enough. You're not trying to maim yourself or leave a permanent scar. Well, unless that's what you intend to do. In that case, have at it. I don't recommend it, but maybe you want a scar to signify something spiritual, much like a tattoo can be spiritual, and I see the value in that. So we're nearing the end of the ritual. Next, you say, quote, "Behold this bleeding breast of mine gashed with the sacramental sign," end quote. I usually gesture towards the mark of my breast again. Then you follow these instructions, quote, "He puts the second cake to the wound," end quote, and then you say, quote, "I staunch the blood, the wafer soaks it up, and the high priest invokes," end quote. And you could alter that high priest, high priestess, either way. You could even, as a female, use high priest if you're invoking, especially with the adorations, Ankaf Nakansu, or if your holy guardian angel is male, and you want to take on the god form of your holy guardian angel, that works. You could still say the high priest invokes. You're invoking power at this point to manifest whatever your intention is through the cake as well. And it should be a union with Horus or the HGA and ability to perform your true will. That is, unless you know what your true will is, then specifically focus on whatever that is. Then you consume the cake of light and say, quote, "This bread I eat, this oath I swear, as I inflame myself with prayer. There is no grace, there is no guilt, this is the law, do what thou wilt," end quote. So by this point, through your prayers, invocations, etc., you should have reached this state of ecstasy. With your communion with the divine since the beginning, giving that sign of the Emperor, you should have that connection. And it should be really, really powerful, overwhelming, energetic. What you might describe as energized enthusiasm. If done correctly, you might even be shaking and sweating, despite hardly physically exerting yourself. The words in this last quote now are very important. Quote, "There is no grace, there is no guilt," end quote. Now, they can be honest. How many times have you done something, especially good, something good for you, for yourself, and because of societal pressures, you actually felt bad about it. The purpose here is to reinforce deep in your unconsciousness that you need to do what is right for you. So this line through this ritual actually plants that seed unconsciously. And when you plant something in your unconscious, it manifests through your actions, your words, your thoughts. So regardless of who thinks what about what you have to do for yourself, you need to do it, regardless of how it affects anything or anyone. Keep in mind, this is not an excuse to be a piece of shit and hurt anyone out of spite. No. It's rather that in every action you take, that action should be calculated to help you do your true will and be your most authentic self as you try to accomplish the great work, as you do your great work. And you don't get bonus points in the community for this. No one should praise or look down on you for you doing your will. They should be too busy doing their true wills to worry about what the next person is doing. And keep in mind, in Thelemic philosophy, we don't believe that God is going to bless you for being nice to people. Jesus is not going to jump down off the cross to save you. No, you are responsible for yourself, your own happiness, your actions, and how you treat people. And that happiness is going to come by being who you are and doing your true will. If you are meant to be some great historical figure based on some innate skills that you have, that is good. Go do that. If you were meant to have a humble, simple life of quiet with little money, just enough to survive, go do that. Be who you are, and this ritual will help you manifest that which you are. The symbolic death has now occurred through that last prayer. Now you are like the phoenix, reborn from the ashes, burned by the flame of your prayers. There are two axioms in Thelema that summarize what I'm trying to convey. 1. Inflame thyself in prayer. 2. Die daily. Now, the first I've explained. The second means that through every experience you have, you are changed. Who you were is gone through every new experience. Like the Tao, you should do no thing. Embrace every experience that comes to you, as it is going to change you, and you could do nothing to stop this from occurring. You could try, but that's just going to give you a ton of either anxiety or depression, fear. You're going to be annoyed trying to stop things from happening. It's caused a lot of agitation. Thus, if you embrace and whatever this experience that you're going to have after this ritual, if you embrace every experience that comes to you, rather than hurting you, it helps you. Every happy and painful experience, once embraced, no longer hurts but helps. It allows you to change. It helps you change. Every day, cells in our bodies die and are replaced with new ones. After a decade, physically, you're literally an entirely new being. No longer a single cell of who you were remains. It is then clear that nature is to die and change. So embrace every change as the illusion it is, merely a phantom of truth of the reality, the Maya, that which is cast by the logos of the Magus to enslave mankind. But also, the Magus speaks truth to liberate mankind, the Lima. You are bound to do your true will. Therefore, embrace every experience you have as a stepping stone towards the accomplishment of the great work. Die daily. Again, and for the last time, you strike 11 times upon the bell and cry, Abrahadabra, a final call for union. Then you say, quote, I entered in with woe, with mirth I now go forth, and with thanksgiving, to do my pleasure on the earth among the legions of the living, end quote. What this describes is a state of being before and after performing this ritual. Symbolically, you entered old, tired, enmeshed in the gross matter of the body. Now you have died and are reborn anew, bathed in the fire of the light, coming now from your ashes. You are ready to go forth and do your true will. But, while bearing in mind that much of mankind is totally engrossed in their gross bodies, and are still lost and many clueless of what they should be doing with their life. Many are not accepting of their orbit as a star, and thus are prone to crash into one another, even you, as a magician doing your will. Still, you are liberated, and thankfully so. You are free. You have the ability to go out amongst the legions. Legions, a play on legion, we are many in the Bible. This equates mankind with a demonic host, a lost state of being, and so just go be happy and do your will amongst them. Do your will despite them. The very last line says, quote, he goeth forth, end quote. Here, again, I give the sign of silence. absorbing all energy and light in the temple into my body, and I walk out of the temple still giving the sign of silence. Now, before we close, I want to look at chapter 62 of the Book of Lies, which is itself a commentary on chapter 44. Chapter 62 is titled Twigs, ? So quit twigs, like a question. And the comment to this chapter says about the title, Twig, dost thou understand? Also, the phoenix takes twigs to kindle the fire in which it burns itself. So this chapter is short. I'm just going to read it and speak what feels appropriate after. Twig. The phoenix hath the bell for sound, fire for sight, a knife for touch, 2 cakes, one for taste, the other for smell. He standeth before the altar of the universe at sunset when earth life fades. He summons the universe and crowns it with magic light to replace the sun of natural light. He prays unto and gives homage to Ra-Hoor-Khuit. To him he then sacrifices. The first cake, burnt, illustrates the prophet drawn from the scheme of incarnation. The second, mixed with his life's blood, is eaten, illustrates the use of lower life to feed the higher life. He then takes the oath and becomes free, unconditioned, the absolute, burning up in the flame of his prayer and born again, the phoenix. So the first 3 lines of this chapter establish that the Mass of the Phoenix is a Eucharist of 5 elements that I spoke about in my last video of Magic and Theory and Practice, chapter 20 of the Eucharist. So a Eucharist of 5 elements is the 5 senses: sight, sound, smell, touch, and hearing. And these correspond again with the 5 elements, as you could see that previous video. The sacrifices to Ra-Hoor-Khuit are certainly of importance. The burnt cake illustrates, quote, prophet drawn from the scheme of incarnation, end quote. It is a giving up of physical matter. It means that the physical is temporary, but the spiritual is eternal. The second cake eaten revitalizes the body with the energy of the cake and prana in the blood that's in the cake, or now on the cake as well. The lower life form, your blood cells, are burnt up in your stomach, feeding your higher form of life, the magician itself. The performing of this ritual feeds the soul, allows for communion with Ra and the HGA. The oath is at the end, about no grace, no guilt, this is the law, do what thou wilt. You are swearing before the Lord of the Aeon that you will do your will. This oath is not sworn lightly. Gods are not people. Horus is a god of vengeance. Keep that in mind. So, that's basically it. You enter, perform this ritual, are bathed in the fire of light, and are reborn free to go out and do your true will. I just want to mention really quick the difference between will and true will. Will is anything that you do with intention and forethought to cause something to happen as a result. True will, however, is what you are born to do. It's the most important things that you've done in your life, that you will do in your life. And a part of true will is spiritual. As a race, humans have become intelligent enough to study the occult sciences, to understand what creation of the universe is, how it happened, and what we are supposed to do as a result of it. Part of it is that, as a race, we must inevitably remain incarnate, yet attain back to union with the divine source. Along the way to that is realizing that who you are as an individual, a spark of Godhead, is manifested as yourself. So you owe it to yourself, God, who incarnated as you, to be the most authentic version of yourself, so that you experience what you need to as a divine being experiencing itself from a unique point in the universe. While doing that, you must seek out that which is most pleasurable to you, and seek out what experiences will most aid you in your process, helping you grow into the person you truly are as an individual. All the rest, if it is intentional, is just will. Still important, as it helps you go about your day-to-day as productively as possible. But the end goal is true will. Being God, experiencing itself. Love is the law, love under will. I'll see y'all in the next one.